Many of you have worried that Canada has lost its compassionate and constructive voice in the world over the past 10 years. Well, on behalf of 35 million Canadians, we're back.
They want to break it down? No, that's our answer.
We shouldn't be afraid of the word feminist. Men and women should use it to describe themselves anytime they want.
I understand one of the priorities for you was to have a cabinet that was gender balanced. Why was that so important to you?
Because it's 2015.
You seem rather popular, Prime Minister. I just wanted to ask you, how does it feel to be cast as the world's new big liberal superhero? I mean, you feel like you need a cape to fly in it at this moment.
You know what? One of the things that we did over the past years was just really listen to Canadians and talk about the values. And forget whether it can succeed in politics or not. What kind of political leadership would you like as a citizen if you could design it, if you could invent it? And we worked very hard to reflect the values that people aspired to, instead of worrying on what was practical or what worked through division or fear.
Well, you just had a big success in 5 by-elections seats, which is great. You won them. Your approval rating, a bit less of a honeymoon now than it was. So how are you managing those expectations? Because inevitably, after the big glow of being the kind of, the superhero who won, now you're going to have to face the realities of governing.
Well, I think people are realistic about what governing and what approach is. They know that there's a lot of work to do to change, and we got elected on a platform of real change, and we're working very hard to do it, and we're bringing in all sorts of measures that aren't just sort of short-term fixes, because one of the things people know is you can't fix a lot of things with a Band-Aid. You need to think about incremental change that's going to make a big difference. We just brought forward our budget for the year, and for the first time ever, we have a Chapter 5 that is a gender-based analysis of everything within the budget. And it means that any initiative we put forward actually gets looked at as, well, is this positive or negative for women? Is there more we have to do? When we invest in infrastructure, for example, you know that there's going to be a lot of construction jobs, predominantly male, in rural or remote areas for many infrastructure. Well, what impact is that going to have on the local population in terms of gender-based violence, in terms of sex trade? There are all sorts of things you have to think about in everything you do, and having that kinds of conversations and making it explicit in the budget, understanding there's a lot more to do, even in terms of the analysis, is stepping in the right direction.
Well, you've been very proud to call yourself a feminist, which I think is great, because the more men can say that in public and loud and proud, the more influential it can be. What kind of influence was your mother on you in that? Because you have this incredibly famous, wonderful mother who was very much in the public eye. And we hear so much about your great father, Pierre Trudeau, but what was the relationship that you had with your mother, and did that impact tremendously on you being a feminist?
What's interesting is over the course of the early parts of my political career, people say it less now, they used to say, oh, he's just his mother's son, as a way of dismissing me. And every time I'd say, oh, yes, thank you. I am so proud of that. My mom right now is traveling across Canada and even parts of the world to talk about destigmatizing mental health. She struggled with depression, with bipolarity all her life, was misdiagnosed, was marginalized, particularly in the political years with my father. And her strength and her sense of justice and her brilliance has shone through in her as a mother all her life, and now finally she's being able to share that with the world with her books and with her stories, and I'm just so incredibly proud to be her son.
Yeah, so great. Good. I love that. You know, people see you, I think, very much as, you know, a sort of elite wonder boy. But actually, as I do look at your past, you certainly behaved like it when you walked in, anyway. When I do look at your past, I do see, actually, you had a lot of tragedy in your life, though. I mean, you know, you did, your mother did go through this horrible struggle with being bipolar, and you lost your younger brother when he was 25, and you were also raised, you know, with the spotlight of the huge spotlight of public glare, with your father, Pierre Trudeau, being such a legendary prime minister. How difficult was it for you to sort of rise above all those issues and create your own identity?
First of all, everyone goes through difficult times in their lives. I mean, we all have various struggles, and I'm certainly not going to complain. I also had extraordinary advantages, great education. I got to travel around the world. I got, you know, to be given tremendous opportunities as a kid and as a young adult. But at the same time, the way I was raised was to say, okay, not to quote Spider-Man, but if you're lucky enough to be given opportunities, you need to do right by them. You need to be conscious that if, you know, the world gave you, or the universe, or the creator, or whatever it is, made you more successful or more fortunate than your peers, you had a greater responsibility to have a positive impact with those things that you were given to shape the world and to make the great balance work out, that the universe was right and randomly investing a little more in you.
Well, nice. Well, one of the things that your late father, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, said was that living next to the United States is like sleeping with an elephant. One is affected by every twitch and grunt. Well, recently, the elephant, shall we say, has been on a bit of a rampage, okay? I mean, we've seen, you know, climate change, the Muslim travel ban, trade, you know, I could go on. How head-snapping has it been for you to sort of pivot from expecting this other administration, Hillary Clinton, and with all that goes with it, and having to kind of snap into this other mode where you're dealing with a very different administration from the one that you expected?
Well, I think, first of all, on one of the things, the lessons of the past years, including in Canadian politics, where we went from a distant third-place party, very low expectations by most of the analysts, to winning a strong majority government, is that you never know what's going to happen in a given campaign, and therefore I took a very reasonable path in that of saying, look, I will work with whomever the United States elects, because the fact is, Canada is so interwoven with the United States in our economy and dependent on in so many ways that we need to have a constructive working relationship with whoever's in place. And that's exactly what I've stayed focused on. And because our focus is very much on creating opportunities, creating good jobs, you know, dealing with the future in all its challenges in a way that inspires confidence for Canadians and optimism, we need to work constructively with the United States to create good jobs on both sides of the border, and that's the lens I'm taking on it. Well,
you seem to have forged a good bond with Ivanka Trump, collaborating on her United States-Canada Council for the Advancement of Women Business. Do you see her as representing the sort of a more sympathetic strand to work within the Trump administration? That this was an interesting way to create bonds with the Trump administration?
Well, one of the things to understand about the Canada-U.S. relationship is it's way bigger than just Prime Minister to President. It goes through governors and our premiers. It goes through legislators. It goes through business organizations and business leaders. So we'll use all different avenues we can to highlight the closeness of the relationship, the interdependency, the millions of good jobs on the U.S. side of the border that depend on smooth flow of goods and services across our border. There's lots of ways to reach out, and being able to highlight the need for women leadership, which is something that I've always pushed. I mean, every community, every town I go to, I try to gather around, have a round table with extraordinarily successful business people who happen to be women to talk about what more we can do to create success, to create pathways, to reduce barriers. So this council is the kind of thing I've worked on. You just did that this morning, didn't you? You were just doing that this morning.
I
did that, yeah, a few hours ago with some extraordinary leaders.
Well, last night Ambassador Nikki Haley said on our stage that the United States doesn't do soft power. And I wondered, is that an elephant twitch that you might want to respond to at all?
You know, Canada doesn't have the biggest military or the biggest population around, and we know that there are lots of ways of influencing events on the world stage. I mean, recently we're all shocked and horrified by the terrible images and actions that just happened in Syria with chemical weapons, which we obviously unequivocally condemn and are pushing the international community to do more, to condemn, to find out what's going on this. And the different ways Canada's been involved. I mean, we were just, our extraordinary foreign minister, Chrystia Freeland, who's no stranger to New York, was in Brussels talking about how the international community needs to lead to move forward on stability and peace in Syria, while at the same time condemning this latest horrific act that shows the war very much ongoing. Canada's one of the largest national donors to a UN body that actually investigates violations of chemical weapons crimes around the world. We also are very much pushing on the Security Council to adopt those resolutions. These are influences we have, and then on top of that, Canada feels that we can show how to do more specifically for Syria, both through the billions of dollars in development aid we've sent, but also by welcoming in refugees, which was something that and what's amazing about that is a government doesn't get to decide, oh, let's just bring in 25,000, it ended up being 40,000 refugees, and sort of sign a document and have it happen. This happened because millions upon millions of Canadians, through their communities, through church groups or organizations or individual families, got together and decided, yes, we want to sponsor, we want to support these refugees. And it's a testament to everybody wanting to do more.
Well, I think it's been a huge inspiration to the world. But there's also obviously always the shadow. You know, we see rising populism all over the world. We've seen this, this pushback for Angela Merkel has been very kind of difficult for her because, she's been blamed when incidents happen. And we read just today in the New York Times that there's a rising sort of Islamist feeling in Quebec. Do you worry that this is going to end up being, for you, a problem? Or do you think you can figure out ways to not have that happen?
I think we have to recognize that there is an awful lot of fear and anxiety out there in the world. People are worried about their future, about their kids' future. Perhaps in many of our sort of Western successful countries, people are facing that for the first time, perhaps the next generation won't have the kind of opportunities and quality of life that the previous generation did, that idea of progress that gave a sense of stability and even social cohesion to diverse communities is breaking down, and that anxiety means people are ripe to be sort of have their fears enhanced or pointed in unconstructive directions through finger pointing or laying blame or various things. So what we did in the election campaign was very much focused on, okay, there are real challenges out there. How do we work together to fix it? And one of the things that we've done and focused on, and not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it makes good economic sense, is figuring out how to put more women in leadership roles, how to bring more women to be successful in business as entrepreneurs. Because not only do you create more success for those companies or organizations, but it changes the types of conversations that leaders and decision makers are having. And having a gender-balanced cabinet has been something that has led to a level of depth of conversation and an approach to solving problems that, quite frankly, leads you to a much better place and a much better way of sharing with citizens that, yes, we are allaying these fears that we understand, but that we know we can overcome together.
Well, you know, I think people have become very fascinated with Canada recently, because, I mean, I would wager that a great many people in this room have Googled Canada real estate, okay, over the last few months. And I've personally become obsessed about why it is that US and Canada has evolved so incredibly differently and in such profoundly different ways. I mean, to many of us it seems that, you know, you're so close and yet so far from what we have, in a sense. I mean, you do have universal health care, you do have gun control, you do have this open immigration or open attitude to immigration. You've had paid maternity leave since 1921. Tell us why it's so different.
One of the things that I think is important, and I find myself telling this to people around the world, Canada's not a magical place that is some sort of unicorn.
Don't destroy my hopes here.
We had a very divisive election campaign in the last election that featured, snitch lines for Muslim crimes. It featured extremely divisive narratives and ruthless, brutal personal attack ads that resonated, and that were millions of dollars were spent on these campaign tools because it's seen to work. So we have the same kinds of questions and divisions within our community as any other one. We've just been able to pull together in a way that understands that we do succeed better when we all succeed. We do works to be there for each other. And maybe it's the winters, maybe it's the distances between our communities, but we know we have to lean, and this through history, lean on the success of each other if we're going to be successful. So there's definitely something about it, but the important thing is that it didn't happen by accident, and it won't continue without effort. It takes a lot of deliberate, positive leadership and choices by community leaders, by business leaders, by political leaders to make choices not to take the easy way out and to do difficult things. I mean, you showed the clip of me saying, because it's 2015. Well, before it could be 2015, it had to be 2014 and 2013 and 2012, which were years in which I went out and my team went out and convinced great, successful women, community leaders or global leaders to step up and run for politics in a very divisive time. It was really difficult. We convinced Chrystia Freeland to come back from running the Thomson Reuters newsroom here in New York to come run for a seat in Toronto to maybe get to move her family to Ottawa. This was a challenge and a massive pay cut, challenge to do, but it was about doing the right thing.
I think you're quite persuasive, though.
Well, you know who else is really
much better than the Thomson Reuters newsroom?
Women themselves. We had a program where we emailed out to all of our contacts across the country, supporters and interested people, ask her to run, where we asked women to ask another woman to run for office, to step up. Because we know you have to ask a few times before a woman says, yes, she'll run for office. I mean, you ask a man, do you want to run for office? His first question is, when do I start? You ask a woman, can you run for office? Her question is, really, why me? Do you think I'm good enough? Are you sure? So getting people to ask and to put that pressure and to say, yes, we need you, we want you, was really important. And that was the work that we had to do in order to get extraordinary women in sufficient numbers to be able to do a gender-balanced cabinet.
Well, I think you're seeing a lot of action here on that front now. Obviously, to succeed in politics today, you have to really know how to have a media ability at communication skills. It just doesn't work not to have communication skills. And one of the things you've always been brilliant at, I think, is sort of deploying the media skills you have to kind of make a point. In 2012, when I want to show this clip because it's so great. As a two-term Liberal MP, you challenged then-Conservative Quebec Senator Patrick Brazeau to fight in a charity boxing match, right? Now, presumably you were trying to make a point that, you know, you were not going to be seen anymore as somehow the elite son of a former prime minister. But it was a hell of a gamble. Let's just see this clip, please, of the moment when you took on...
The bookie said 3-to-1 odds. The pollsters said 3-to-1 odds. The Tory is getting crushed.
And there you have it, the fight called for Justin Trudeau.
I mean, what if you'd lost? I mean, that just seems to me a fascinating gamble.
First of all, we raised $250,000 for cancer research, so that was the big thing. Secondly, I'd been boxing a long time and had, you know, do one fight on my bucket list and missed it before getting into politics, so I got to do it there. But the question you pose about media savviness and communication skills, it's not actually about knowing the media or understanding social media. It's about understanding people. Understanding how people talk to each other, how people listen to each other, how we tell and share our stories, and what we actually want for our community, for our country, for our world, and talking like people talk and connecting with them on that level. So I was incredibly fortunate to have been dragged around by my father across the country for the first 13 years of my life as he was PM, and have met and got to know people subsequently in every corner of the country and indeed around the world, and have a pretty good sense of, you know, what people are really like, as opposed to what pollsters or political strategists or other people, you know, tell you what folks are like. And one of the things I learned was those leadership moments that people look for aren't those moments where you stand up and you say something clearly and strongly that everyone agrees with and are happy that their leader is saying, because people see, well, that was easy for the politician to say. What people look for is moments where you stand up and say something difficult or controversial, and it pushes back against people who otherwise might support you, but say, oh, I'm having a little difficulty with that one. And what you see is it actually demonstrates your capacity to stand for what you believe in and not just what happens to be popular. And that's very much what us all, as wiser consumers of media and politics these days than ever before, are looking for. Is someone going to stand up for what they truly believe in and what their values are, and not just which way the wind is blowing? And I think that is what has helped. But that still doesn't explain the boxing match. But that's
about to say. I mean, well, obviously you did imbibe a tremendous amount from your father, who was a great and skillful politician, and you traveled around the world with him and must have learned a lot from that. But at the same time, you've also done this wonderful thing for the idea of being a feminist. And, you know, there was a very interesting piece in the New York Times at the weekend by Frank Bruni talking about how men often get stuck in what he called the man box, this kind of fake idea of masculinity and so on. And I wondered how we can make a change on that, because it is so bedeviling. Every woman, in a way, who comes to our stage says, you know, you have to change the mindset of men and make men understand it's for them as well to partner with us, because we can't do it on our own. And, you know, you're married to Sophie Trudeau, who was a terrific broadcaster and so on. How do you parent and partner with Sophie and raise your daughters? And how do you tell men to break out of the man box? Because this is something that is bedeviling our world.
Well, first of all, Sophie is there to challenge me and inspire me. She's done amazing work with women's issues at home and around the world, and she continues to. And one of the conversations I had with her, I said, yes, we have 2 sons and a daughter. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to focus on making sure that my daughter understands that she can do anything. There should be no barriers. She should be able to be as successful and proud a feminist as she possibly can. And Sophie said, yes. And what are you going to tell your sons? I said, oh, okay, I will also tell my sons to be feminists and that their sister can do anything they want. And that idea that, you know, we can't just talk about how women need to be empowered without talking to the people who unfairly still have more power, the men. The men have to be part of the solution. And quite frankly, you know, when you actually start seeing boards go from saying, oh, we're getting a lot of public pressure, we really should appoint a few women to the board, to saying, oh my God, we really need to point a few more women to the board because we need better quality of decisions. We're having trouble with our growth. We need to reach out to understand the market better and understand our motivation better. These are the kinds of things that matter. I mean, when we start realizing that including women and in promoting women to positions of power isn't just a nice thing to do, it's the smartest possible thing to do, you start connecting it in more meaningful ways to the workplace. When you look at the numbers of how much more successful boards with closer to parity on are in terms of revenue, when you think about the number of great ideas that get left on the table because women entrepreneurs or innovators don't have the kind of access to capital that is given to men on startups, this is something that will directly leave us less successful as a society if we don't figure out how to empower and include women in every area of success.
Well, just to give you an example, I know. It's absolutely great what you just said. You actually put your money where your mouth is. I was actually just looking for that great number that you've just given out. You gave a huge grant recently. 650 million for reproductive health you gave to mark International Women's Day, right? And that 650 million could not have been more needed because it was just really at the time when the Trump administration had said that they were going to reinstate and expand the global gag rule, which denies federal funding to health NGOs overseas who so much as mention abortion. So you did, this 650 million you have granted is extremely significant. Just tell me quickly about that.
Well, we know that if you want to create success, particularly in the developing world and places that need so much success, if you empower women so they can, like a man, choose when and with whom to have a family, make those choices, empower them to be able to stay in school a few more years, able to actually make choices around how they want to live their life, you're empowering them. So the money we're given isn't just to maternal and reproductive health, it's also to maternal and reproductive rights, because it's fundamentally a question of rights. If you're not promoting choice for women, you're limiting her rights to live a free and life of her choice.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We loved having you here today.